A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and an absolute pleasure to be here with you in London, where I spent many years of my life having an awful lot of fun, and I love this city. Thinking better business, finding new ways to work. In my career as what I've become known as the change guy, I've spent my life helping organizations get to the point where people within them can change for the better. And that's what I speak about at conferences around the world. Change, the road ahead, thinking of better business and those kinds of things. And really, like Justin had a revelation earlier, I think I've also discovered within my own travels across that interesting career that I've had, that it really comes down to our brains and the software that needs an update within them. Because the fact that conferencing, as Ryan mentioned earlier, has become a little bit boring, the fact that ordinary seems to be acceptable in this day and age, is really a factor of the fact that our brains are not switched on to the rate of business change that they need to be in order to move forward in the right direction. You know, I've spent my life in a previous life being a strategist, being a corporate communications specialist, and all of those things where I've spent my time, as many of you have, doing the charts and the graphs and covering the walls, looking for the ultimate plan, the ultimate way of going forward. And I do believe that that's wrong in this day and age. The world has changed remarkably since the time that I was at university, and we all know that, but don't often know how to deal with it. Doing more of what we used to do isn't working. I mean, the concept of business started in about the 1850s. The only reference point for business where people banded together and did things in a certain direction was the military. And we formed our companies, which is itself a militaristic term. We formed companies of men, as they were, the CEO at the top, the pyramid below, and we're going to work, most of us, in an organization that was based on 250-year-old and beyond military strategy. Conferencing, by the way, is very similar. 1850s for conferencing going onwards. The only reference point we had was pile people into a darkened room, put a raised podium at the end, and somebody would preach from the good book, which today is just called Death by PowerPoint. And we do the same things over and over again, when in fact what we need to be looking for is the right thing for the right time, and it's got to be different. We need to change, and we need to understand how to do so. You know, we are creatures of habit as humans. We repeat the same behaviors over and over and over. You came on a different commute this morning by coming to the Barbican, but for the most part, Monday through Friday, those of us who go to work regularly, leave home at the same time, turning left or right, whatever form of transport we're using, we get stuck in traffic. And what do? We moan about the traffic. How can we moan about traffic when we are the bloody traffic, is what concerns me. And what we need to do, literally, is find new ways to work. Except that tomorrow, when you go back to the normal pattern, you're going to turn left or right as per normal and go back and repeat the same behaviors. Unless we update our software, unless we find some way to change and start thinking about why industrial era patterning no longer is relevant or works for us. There is a new formula for business success today. Not based on the old formula that we all know and have learned, whereas in the past we used to say, well, yeah, look, I know things are different. If I modify my behavior marginally, it should give me a good sense of future. Hell, they taught that to MBA students until 1999. And you always know when someone has an MBA because they tell you in the first 30 seconds that they have one. Even if you did it at Harvard or Yale or any really top-skilled university, your MBA pre the beginning of this century was out of date. There's a new formula today for MBA students because the new formula for business says we've got to do things differently. Today, what we've got to do is realize our past and our present are really irrelevant. What we need to find is a point of uniqueness, a point of difference, something that sets us apart in a world of literally 150 million registered businesses which are currently operating around this planet. Your company is one of 150 million organizations. What makes you different? That's going to give you a sense of future in this day and age, not doing more of the same old, same old. So we need to focus as we're driving into that road ahead and looking at that future, which is coming at us a lot quicker than it ever has before. We need to focus on the destination. Most of us look in the wrong place. We think the answer lies somewhere behind us in the rearview mirror. Don't navigate the next time you drive by only looking in your rearview mirror. I'm not promoting that for a second. Health and safety would kill me. You've got to look forward. What is that future? What is that around that corner there? Somewhere over there, is that a fire? Is that a road accident? What's going on? And you'll notice there are no road signs to guide you on that quickly arriving future ahead of you until now. Let's think about what we should be doing. We should be simplifying, we should be smartening up, and we should be becoming more specialist at what it is that we do. And I want to just talk through those three things very briefly, if I may, because that's part of the stuff that I share at conferences around the world. You know, there are always heroes. We talked about Churchill this morning. You can always find one individual in society that really stands out and shines out. This guy, for the ancient Chinese, was an absolute sage, Confucius. The man himself was brilliant. He taught the Chinese how to live and how to work 3,000 years ago. And strangely enough, with modern thinking now, Confucius seemed to be one of those seers into the future, because what he taught the Chinese really became most relevant in this century, when they've changed themselves remarkably as a result of his teachings. This was my favorite Confucian phrase. I love that. And if you don't speak Mandarin, let me translate it for you. Life is simple. Humans complicate life. Wow. That's a hell of an insight. And if you want to know the entire teachings of Confucius, you can download them onto your Kindle right now for less than £1, I think, if you download the entire works instantly today. But I can save you the quid, because the entire works of Confucius are here, summed up on an ancient statue in the dusty streets of Beijing, where you look at that and translate the old-fashioned post-it note, and this is what he taught the Chinese. Three things about simplifying their lives. Number one, he said, identify what's important to you. Number two, eliminate everything else completely. And number three, with what's left, if you can't do it on your own, automate it, delegate it, or ask for help. Simplifying is a great key to unlocking the mysteries of our turbulent and distant past. We've got to think about what we do into the future. By the way, the Chinese on that have lifted themselves out of poverty. In 1999, 86% of Chinese were in total poverty. Today, that figure is less than 1.8% of the Chinese population. They've modified their behavior in the same time as we have in the last 20 or 30 years, thanks to the same technology that we've got, even though that technology was coming at them fast, and they still have more restrictions on internet access and the societal rules by which they live. But China has become the fastest growing economy in the world as a result of simplifying it from a Confucian point of view. When it comes to smartening up and thinking about uploading our brains new software, we've got to understand the difference between the way we learn. When we start learning at the base of this pyramid, we start in what psychologists call unconscious incompetence at everything that we do. You're striving for excellence, or so we think in terms of the pyramidal thinking. But the problem is this. When you begin, when you don't know what you don't know, learning to read, to walk, to talk, to work, whatever it might be, when you're unconscious and incompetent, let's say you want to learn to drive, thinking about the future and driving into that. Before you had your first driving lesson, you were unconscious and incompetent. Somebody was brave enough to stick an L plate on your car and take you to the next stage, which is conscious incompetence. I know what I don't know. And when you're going through the driving experience, what's intriguing about that, that's when you were stalling the engine or jerking away from the lights or learning the mechanism of perfecting the art of driving a mechanized vehicle. Eventually, because we're humans, apex predators, top of the food chain, we're able to master the art of that mechanical instruction. And the day you took your driving test and finally heard those words, congratulations, you've passed, you had been, according to psychologists, adjudged to be both conscious and competent. You know what it is that you know. And it's great when you're in that state, because the day you passed your driving test, you celebrated like crazy. Yes! I got my driver's license! I'm going to tell the world, Facebook, here I come! I can drive! And that's how it feels when you're conscious and competent. Feels great. You all remember the day you passed your driving test. That day, you became the best driver in the world. You were literally the best driver in the world. You were conscious and competent. But sadly, it only lasts about 2 weeks in the human condition, which is why the insurance company wouldn't give you the world's best insurance deal as a brand new licensed driver. Because 2 weeks after we learn something as humans, we relegate everything that we learned and we move automatically to the state that psychologists call unconscious competence. I don't know what it is that I know. Wow. That stops us from reaching conscious excellence. Conscious excellence in the case of driving could be a Lewis Hamilton, a Kimi Räikkönen, driving a world championship Formula One car. All of us could do that, by the way. The experts say to become totally expert at what you need to do, you need about 150,000 hours of conscious practice. Wow. Call it about 10 or 15 years. So 10 to 15 years from now, you could be in 2033, the Formula One driving champion of the world. Why don't all of us become Formula One driving champions? We don't put in the hours. We give up after 2 weeks. So what I find is people around the world in a state of absolute unconscious competence every single day of my life. And what we need to do is realize that we don't need to put in the next 150,000 hours. We need to take a step back to get back to where that feeling was. Man, I feel fantastic when you were conscious and when you were competent. That's how we need to upload our software and start thinking about doing things differently. For leaders, it's not about your own performance. It's about working with the team, a continuous strategy of learning, of refining, of developing. It's like leading an orchestra, because maybe as an individual, you're the best piano player in the world. Maybe you're the best violinist in the world, the best cellist. But you cannot play a symphony on your own. And leaders have to bring together consciously through a continuous strategy of learning and thinking and developing. You see, to get better, we've got to confront ourselves. We've got to learn consciously the difference between urgent and important. And this is kind of intriguing to me because in this rushed pace of 21st century life, we often think urgent and important means much the same thing. If you separate them onto two axes and make important run along the bottom, and up the top you make it kind of urgent from 0 to 100, there are 4 stages that we could be in. The first of those is some things are highly urgent and some things are highly important. Those are the areas that we should be learning in at the moment, which most of us automatically don't because we switched off into unconscious behavior. If you've dealt with the urgent and important stuff, the next stuff you're dealing with is stuff that's still important but less urgent. And that would be the second area, perhaps where we need to look for new ideas and new thoughts. Now you've dealt with the important stuff, what's left that's urgent and not so important? Well, that's third quadrant, where we need to live appropriately. And last, as Confucius says, if you can't do it on your own, automate it, delegate it, but eliminate first and foremost the stuff that is neither urgent nor important. You can't just deal with 350 emails a day. You can apply any theory to anything that you do, not just email, to sort this out. And it's quite simple when you learn consciously the old reduction of your process into the new area. The things that we should be learning about are people, our customers, our partners, the human relationship contact that Ryan mentioned a short while ago. The things that we need to look for are ideas, opportunities, and growth once we've understood people, customers, and partners, as Justin was saying with his Pitch to Win program. The way we need to live, well, we all understand health and safety and ethics and the new norms. We've got to have the appropriate ethics, morals, and values. But what should we leave behind? All of the unconscious stuff and most of the negativity and doubt and routine that we put ourselves through every single day. There's a massive difference between all of those thoughts. Thinking better business. Now, what I do in my normal programs is take people in, because we don't just want to preach from the stage, take people through that process. Your own employees, the people at your conference, your delegates, and we'll put them into a session where they can work for 20 minutes on what they should simplify, on what they should smarten up, and on what they should be doing to be more specialist. You'll be amazed how marketing directors, CEOs, and even financial directors look at the results of what your own delegates create. Because the answers, when you prompt for them in the appropriate way, can emerge beautifully from within your audience. We call that a bit of a masterclass at USB, a keynote, plus perhaps some form of masterclass work or intervention that goes with them. You'll hear more about those throughout the course of our USB day today. But we can get people thinking and feeling and working differently. And if you can find the key to all of that, you'll unlock the way to a much brighter and a much better future. It's a journey of change. I look forward to sharing it with you and your conference delegates. Thank you very much indeed.